Okay, so this video then is gonna show you the revision session. Okay, you've got suggested timings here. Question 1 is name 4 things, roughly about 2 minutes. Question 2, language analysis in 1 paragraph. We know analysis talks about layering, zooming, about 10 12 minutes. Question 3, narrative structure. How's it structured to interest you as a reader? 10 minutes, about 8 marks. Question 4, evaluation. An opinion. A student said, da, 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 to what extent do you agree? 25 minutes, 20 marks. Okay, question 5 is writing. 45 minutes, proofreading time. You should have a plan. There should be crossings out really in there because you're changing and developing. Okay, when we look at that, we look at the amount of marks, we know that question 4 and question 5 are absolutely critical to this exam. Question 1 then should be fairly straightforward. Should be easy to get 4 out of 4. Just don't be complacent, okay? Make sure you know which lines that you are taking from, okay? And quote directly from the text. So there's the question from last year's paper. List 4 things about hyenas. So, if I'm looking at that now, I'm saying hyenas attack in packs. They go for zebras. They're hardy attackers. They're clever, and though that would get me 4 marks. But make sure that you're reading it really carefully. We always think about those things. They were the correct answers that you could have. You might look on the right hand side, the things that would be rejected. Okay, don't guess, go with kind of the explicit. Okay, question 2. Question 2 is language analysis. Right, more about less, a lot about a little rather than a little about a lot. Pick your quotations carefully. Try and keep your quotations short. Can you see links through words? Is there a motif, an extended image that runs through? That links to the other video that we've done. Think about different meanings. Okay, so this was the question from last year's paper. Okay, how does the writer use language to describe the hyena's appearance? When I'm looking there, the first thing I can see is this idea of ugliness, and ugly beyond redemption, shaggy, coarse coat, spots, too massive, nostrils too big. All of it links in with that idea. Okay, so for 8 marks 10 minutes, you can't write about everything, but they are some of the things that you might have thought about. Okay, so if we take one of the quotations there, I've just written examples that link to the bands. Okay, so it's ugly beyond redemption. At band 2, somebody might say this phrase suggests it's so horrible to look at, there's nothing can be done about it, there's no chance anybody could see it as attractive. Okay, basically that one in blue is tell me what the quotation means with a little bit of inference. The next band, the short sentence is blunt, and the adjective ugly introduces it as hideous. Ugliness, along with the use of redemption, suggests that there's nothing that can be saved. It has no redeeming features. That's got inference, but it's also got kind of zooming in. It's got layers, okay, single word analysis. Then at green, at the top level, ugly labels the hyena as grotesque straight away. This is emphasised by the harshness of the short sentence. The writer has chosen the phrase beyond redemption because redemption has connotations of being saved by evil, as if the hyena's ugliness is symbolic of a deeper sinister nature. Redemption is something that's offered by God, so this suggests that even the Almighty can't save the animal, it's doomed. So can you see when we think about redemption linking to religion, that's just a more perceptive inference, basically. So on this question, when I talk about a lot about a little, that's our example. Okay, this is what the example would say. Key thing, avoid long quotations. Often thinking about single words within the paragraph for question 2 allows you to be perceptive. If you can't see techniques, don't worry about it. Just talk about individual words and think about the some phrases there that might help you. You might use some adverbials like the writer vividly creates da 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 da, something like that. Okay, that was another quotation from this extract, and you'll see here I've thought about alternative interpretation. The way that the hyena is suffering from a receding hairline can be seen as mocking, and my reasons why. But we could also sympathise, and there's my reasons why. Okay, and the same with this one. And again, what you'll see there, if you pause the video, you might think, right, I picked the simile like symptoms of a skin disease to describe the hyena, right, and that's why. You might just think, what makes it perceptive? Okay, we're on to question three. Question three is about structure, and the one word that I think about when we think about structure is the word links. Okay, so what happens, where does it happen, why, how does it happen, why does it happen, and how do things link back? That's your question from last year's paper. Okay, so for the structure question, a lot of people just say this happens and this happens and this happens, and typically it'll be in the bottom band. You've got to focus on why. Why do things happen where they do, and why are there those links? So keep asking yourself these questions when you're answering question three about how does the writer structure the text? Why does it happen? What's the impact? Is there a technique? And how does it link with the overall text? Some words there that you might consider. And these are some terms that might be useful. We don't know what the extract's going to be, so some of them won't be applicable for your extract. But all of these are important kind of structural terms. Okay, so do's and don'ts. If in doubt, remember the exam paper will help you. Question one is always about the opening paragraph. Okay, so in this paper, it was about hyenas. So you've got to think, why does it start by describing hyenas and how does it describe? Question two was really always about the first narrative shift. It's always about the second or third paragraph of an extract. So in this paper, question two is about this specific hyena's appearance. Why does the writer move from talking about hyenas in general and them being dangerous to describing this ugly hyena? Okay, why have that shift? Question four was always about the second half of the extract. So in this paper, it was about the hyena being funny and not wild and having no threat. So again, why does it end like this when we consider what the start was? Here's an example for question three, and you might pause it. Okay, this isn't the top band example, but in the bits that I've underlined, you might see that they are where I'll link back to previous parts of the text. So I'm not just talking about this happens, this happens, this happens. In my underlined bits, I'm saying how it links back to the beginning or how it doesn't link back to the beginning, and that's important. So the exam boards say that many students focus on the beginning of the extract only, and therefore it was difficult to show any structural shifts or understanding. Okay, and to avoid comments like engages the reader or makes the reader read on, you can't use that tomorrow. Okay, they're too vague. This is an example from last year, and this achieved 7 out of 8. And you might pause it and have a look, but you know, the key things that they say. In the beginning, they start by describing hyenas in general as hardy attackers who are clever. At the beginning, there's a focus on how hyenas are proficient as predators, and they seem a kind of a fearful animal, okay? The writer does it to foreshadow the reveal of the hyena later in the extract. It creates fear and tension. However, when we narrow into this hyena, we see that it's actually whimpering, hesitating. There's a contradiction, there's a juxtaposition of ugliness to fear in the beginning, okay? And this is ironic. We're made really wary of how dangerous hyenas are, but then we're presented with a hyena that is just a bit of a joke. And then by the end, we see a hyena that's vomiting and exploring anguish. Okay, by the end, we realise this hyena is in suffering and in pain. And it contradicts this sense of a hyena being dangerous from the beginning. Okay, we become by the end quite sympathetic towards it. And that's a bit of a surprise because in that first paragraph, we thought they were going to be devilish monsters. Okay, we're on question four then. And question four is like that. The student said this part of the story where the hyena behaves wildly is funny rather than frightening. The writer suggests the hyena is no serious threat to Pi. To what extent do you agree? Okay, like I say, 20 marks here. Absolutely critical. You spend at least 25 minutes on it. You might break the statement into two parts. Okay, that's an example of a quotation from your extract today in the revision session, last year's paper. And what you might do is you might pause this and you might look, how was that 6 to 10 mark response about one quotation different to that one? Okay, and again, we're thinking about layers. Okay. If we want to be perceptive, that's an example about the quotation. All the morning, the hyena ran in circles going yip, 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 yip. Okay. This answer then got 16 out of 20. You'll pause it and you'll have a look. And I just want you to think about, how does it talk about methods throughout, and how does it have an opinion on how it's read? Okay? It's not just saying about what quotations mean, it's linking it to the statement. And again here. So the hyena is presented to be whimpering and hesitating. While the hyena is typically seen as an animal that's predatory, this aural or sound description of it whimpering is normally associated with prey. It goes against its impulses. It suggests the hyena is cowardly and fearful to pose any serious threat. It hacked and coughed, and it was shaking and whining. The violent, but they actually show that the weakness, okay? Shaking implies that it's scared, it's not brave, da 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 da. Look how it's talked about evaluative. It always links back to the statement, but it uses that text, okay? It doesn't just say what quotations mean, it's there. Some general tips on question 4. Okay, question 5. Okay, we know that question 5, the right question, is critical. If you're not successful on this, you can't be successful in English language. That was the question from last year. Okay, I wouldn't go into your exam tomorrow thinking that you're going to have a perfect landscape image, because it doesn't tend to happen anymore. So, there's a few ways you could look at this. Drop, shift, zoom, leave. Drop straight into the scene, shift the focus, zoom in specific, and leave there. Okay. So here is a plan based around that. Okay. Ultimately, you've got to write a narrative with some kind of whole text structure. Here's a different kind of structure. Okay. A nice simple structure. You can go with the back that you can go into your exam is kind of your insurance. So we start by describing the opening. We then move into a character. We then introduce a story element, what a character is doing something. They introduce a symbolic object, a letter, a medal, a photograph or something. We then, really importantly, have a flashback, so a narrative construct. And then we go back to the beginning and we deliberately echo phrases from the opening. The story resolves to an extent, or there's a cliffhanger. So basically we go from wide to narrow to something happening to flashback, same place, different time, different tone, to ending. Within this one here, I also think it's important that you can show that you can vary your paragraph lengths. So, you know, if you look at my structure here, between every big paragraph, I have a single sentence paragraph, and that's like in the paper 1 question 5 video that I put out earlier in the week. So you might pause this and have a look at this now. That single sentence becomes the motif that runs through the text. Okay, and here's an example of it. So I was describing a person in a setting of snow, and you'll see that my motif of snow repeats all the way. So after my first paragraph, the snow was settling. After my second paragraph, the snow continues to fall, and it kind of works in. It becomes a cohesive motif. Okay, listen, you might pause this and have a look, and you might kind of bullet point any vocabulary that you haven't got, because vocabulary is vital. Here's another example. Before the examiner even reads the work, they can tell that there's been crafting. So this candidate, right at the beginning of a short story based on fear and horror, they have 4 minutes to go, 3 minutes to go, 2 minutes to go, 1 minute to go, a bell rang. Okay, again, you might pause that, have a look, and you might take some of the vocabulary. You can use an object as a motif. Okay, so you might have an object that moves all the way through the text. That is something you might consider. And again, this is from last year, okay, and this got 40 out of 40. So you might pause this and make a bullet point and have a look at kind of the words that they use. Look at how they use colour imagery, kind of rich gold, okay. Look at how they use repetition, nothing again. Look how they have different sentence openings, so as they, or you know, I ate sorely with a semicolon sentence there. Look at the examiner's saying this conscious crafting. That's what you need in BAM 4. There is the second one. Look at the vocabulary that we can see in here. Luminescence, calmness, preached, malevolence, rhythmic, hypnotic, emerged, breathtaking, detailed, intricate. It's full of tier 2 vocabulary, and vocabulary is key. Okay, and it ends with that tiger and golden shimmering sunlight. Okay, that's what the exam board said. Okay. Don't try and write it basically over too big a time. Don't try and complete a whole narrative. Look at a response as a chapter or a dramatic moment in a story. Okay. Don't start with like 3 weeks before. Da, 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 da. Yeah. We've got to have that kind of focus. Obviously, you can have your flashback in there. We want you to have that kind of flashback idea. But remember, you can't write a Hollywood movie in 40 minutes in an exam. And then finally, I want to leave you with this, and I think, this is key for your revision, and this is what we call sentence mastery. There's loads of sentence structures there. And, I've got some on that previous video on paper 1 question 5, and then there's some more here. They're just really key that you vary your sentences tomorrow. Okay? So vary your sentences, extend your imagery with a motif, try and have a single sentence that repeats throughout, and then you'll be successful. Okay, this will go alongside all the other videos that are on there for paper 1. I know you've been reminded by your teachers today. Watch these videos in your revision. It's the best revision you can do.